everybody. Welcome to Proms G's event for this evening. And you can see myself and John Thorpe, the presenter, on screen at the moment.
Good evening.
The talk is Project Management as a Career. And as I say, we're very pleased to have John here. He's from Arras People, and many of you will know about that company. I'm sure he'll say a little bit more about them. But before we begin, I'd just like to quickly remind you of our next three events, which are actually on the website. On the 17th of December at 6:30, John Lake will relay his experiences of the changing face of remote working. So that's pretty topical at the moment. Then on the 20th of January, we have how to set up a PMO, a project management office, and that'll be run by Lindsay Scott and Eileen Rodden. So I think that's going to be a very interesting talk. So again, 20th of January that. Then on the 17th of February, the talk is Projects plus Psychology equals Success. And Sharon Damasio will discuss how psychological insights can help your project succeed.
That's a brave one.
Thank you. So a busy program ahead then, plus some more regular events later next year. So keep an eye out on the BCS and Proms G web pages. Right, so that's about Proms G, and now on to tonight's presentation. So I could just say that John is actually a founder and director, co-founder and director at Arras People, which is a well-established recruitment consultancy, and he'll be an invisible person will be helping him there. It's turned out to be one of our most popular events. We've already got over 50 people signed up, and I'm sure there'll be more as we progress. And I suspect some of you may be here because you are considering moving into project management, if you're not already, and I know some of you are in project management already. So to get an idea of the mix out there, we're going to take a confidential poll of your professional backgrounds, and John will be noting the results of this for his talk. I think we ought to oh, somebody's pressed it already. Okay, so there it is, that's the poll. And the idea is you select one of those categories and vote. And after a short while, we'll close the poll. So if you could get on and, yeah, I see quite a lot of you already done it. So keep going. %76% of you have voted. So come on, the rest of you. Don't be shy. Lots of others there. That's interesting, isn't it? Maybe we'll find out who they are later.
Or maybe people could put that on chat just to give us a broader view as to
yes, indeed,
what roles they actually are working in.
Right. We're up to 84% now. Do you think it's going to increase a little bit more?
Let's go with this, I think.
I think we ought to close it now, don't you, John?
Yeah, but I think it'll give us a view, won't it? So
that's right. So that's what it looks like, folks. And by the way, any fake votes have, of course, been rejected. Okay.
I demand a recount.
Yes. Okay, so it's good that there's quite a lot of analysts, people there, and that's one of the traditional routes into project management, but also quite a few people in the program and PMO group. So, right, before I actually hand over to John formally, don't forget to fill in the survey at the end. Okay, folks, because it's very important for us to find out how things have gone, and it's useful for John to get some feedback as well. So don't forget to do that. Ask as many questions as you want on the chat line, and we're fielding those. So now I'll hand over to you, John.
Okay, right. Well, thanks for the introduction there, David. That's appreciated. And good evening to everybody that's decided that this is a good idea for a lockdown Tuesday night. So it's really good to be here. And personally, I think it's a really great subject as well. Ever considered project management as a career? Because it's about people development, and it's about bringing new blood into the project management community. And the way I see it, it's not just about project managers, it's about project management and everybody that is in that family of roles as well. The other interesting thing for me is that what we see is organizations like APM, they're very much talking these days about project management as a first career. Whereas traditionally, and I think still happens today, actually, for many people, it's actually a second step or maybe a third step in their career. And they actually accumulate lots of knowledge before joining the project management groups. So by that time, they've built some real skills and experience that set them up for maybe the more management side of the role, and they can excel in that area. So, like I say, hopefully we'll touch on all the points that you're looking for this evening. If you want to raise questions, then please do that via chat. Oh, I'm being told that chat's not working. But basically, there will be time for questions as well. So hopefully we'll get something sorted out on the tech side of that before we get to that point. So where are we going to start? We're going to start with the learning objectives. So hopefully when you signed up, you saw that we'd written down some learning objectives. So basically, because of the time constraints, we try to pack lots of this in. So there's actually an introduction to the project management domain, focusing around what's the difference between project manager and project management, because sometimes those two words get joined up together, which in my view, they shouldn't really necessarily be so. Domain knowledge and why it's a great advantage, which I think is something that hopefully people will be really interested in this evening. And then we're going to look at career planning, and also the other, I suppose, hot topic is Prince 2, or it's been a hot topic for as long as I've been in project management as to is that the answer or is it the only course of action? So all that and hopefully lots more as well. So the next thing is a little bit about myself. As David said, founding director here at Arras People. A broad experience in project management. I'm one of those people, started out in manufacturing, got involved in implementing projects through MRP that later became ERP, went into consulting, and eventually ended up running our own business. So various stages getting through that career. Enjoy not only the recruitment side of it, but also the career planning and mentoring for people. And hopefully tonight can share some of my journey and the fact that I've lived it and been there. So hopefully that will come through during the talk as well. So I was always told that you should never start a presentation with an excuse. So hopefully this isn't too much of an excuse, but actually what it's hopefully showing is a bit of commitment. I decided to take a fall a couple of weeks ago, which means I'm down to typing with one finger on my left hand, which has sort of slowed me down in my tracks a little bit. So actually what that's allowed me to do is drag in my co-host for this evening, who's taken lots of the strain in terms of pulling the slide sets together and helping me prepare. So we've got with us tonight, also to share her experience, is Lindsay.
Hi, I'm Lindsay. I'm also one of the directors at Arras People. I'm also more into PMO side of project management. So, you know, it's some of the other stuff that I'm doing is around a community events, around PMO flash mob and PMO conference. And we also do some training around PMO as well. But I also spend quite a lot of time coaching and mentoring lots of different types of people that are trying to get into project management. I suppose it's my speciality, isn't it, really? I'm the one that tends to get a lot of people that are looking to take that step. And yeah, so I'm going to be talking in a little while in the session about how you can get into project management from the, I suppose, the practical side in terms of stuff like CVs and things. Okay.
Yep, that's great. Okay, so also breaks up the session as well by having two different presenters. So okay, so Arras People, hopefully some of you have heard of us, but we're just 100% focused on the project management space. That's where we come from. That's the area that we want to play in. We took the business decision back in the early days that project management was our space, and since 2002 we've managed to remain 100% focused on that. We offer recruitment, so we work with our clients, we do permanent recruitment, we do contracting, and we're working with clients such as HS2, we're working with central government, we're working across the whole piece. And I suppose the breadth of it is always quite interesting. Our first client was Meals on Wheels, the charity that some of you may be aware of, and our second client was Visa Europe. So and that's been the way of the business ever since, really. We do work across that whole breadth, and since 2002 we've also seen that project management has become more and more in the public domain and more used in across practically every space these days, I would suggest. So the other thing that I suppose we could be slightly famous for is our benchmark reporting, and that's something again we've been doing for many years. And the whole reason behind that was that back in the early days it was actually quite hard to find some good information about what was happening in the UK market, and that's where the benchmark report started and has been going strong ever since. And we know that that gets read across the government and really across lots and lots of areas where project management is important. So we're a niche player, we're consultative, we like to work with our clients because a lot of the time you'd be surprised that they don't actually understand what they are looking for. So being consultative really helps us. We can bring our knowledge to the table, and we work with what are many times hard to fill roles. So this is where clients have been using their high street recruiters and they've not worked for them. And most of the time that's because they were looking for the wrong thing. We really get involved in what they see as hard to fill roles. So that's what we do at Arras People. So the starting point. So let's get to the main event. So let's start by taking a look at a little bit about the project management domain. I think one of the things that really strikes me these days is that everybody's a project manager. It could be somebody doing some DIY on their house. They could be renovating a house. They're a project manager. It could be somebody undertaking a business initiative. It could be a business change. It could be the implementation of a new software product. Or it could be something as extreme as building the Shard. And what an interesting building that is. And I don't know whether people have ever been up close to it, but when they were building it, it was a fascinating area to be around, because it was built basically on a postage stamp, and it was really fascinating watching them bringing the materials in and building that whole thing. So project management, like I say, everyone's a project manager. I'm sure you've all seen The Apprentice, where what in the old days would have been a team leader has morphed into a project manager. And it almost feels sometimes for someone like me that grew up as an engineer, when everybody seemed to tag, we went through a period where everybody seemed to want to tag engineer. So you had domestic engineers, plumbing engineers, everybody seemed to be called an engineer at some point, and project management seems to have or be going through that sort of similar phase. The interesting thing is that it's not actually a protected status. So anybody can call themselves a project manager. There's no barrier to entry. So, you know, it's not like being a doctor or a dentist or a teacher. And because of that, some would argue that also there's no consistent quality standard, which is sometimes good, but other times can be quite challenging. So in terms of the span, I think it's really fascinating that it covers people that actually probably don't even see themselves or recognize themselves as a project manager, all the way to those that are chartered. I don't know whether you've come across the APM chartered status. So, you know, you've got a real triangle of the masses going all the way up to the very top of the triangle, where people are now being classified as chartered. So as well as everyone's being a project manager, it also feels like project management is everywhere. As I said, back in the early days when I got involved in project management, I suppose I was one of those people that was doing special projects, but hadn't really come across the phrase project manager. I was just somebody in the business that was running, sometimes we were just called business initiatives. And that business initiative was about delivering change. It's just that at that time, I suppose I'd not been introduced to formal project management, formal project management techniques, and I certainly haven't been on a training course, other than actually, I suppose, again, I'm a bit old school in that I was trained as an engineer, and then I was trained as a manager, and I suppose projects fitted in together to bring that all into one cohesive piece. So project management, I mean, anyone that's a sports fan will be certainly aware that every new manager or every new owner wants to call their new way a project. So Pep Guardiola, Man City project. And you hear this all the time. It's again, it's quite fascinating that people choose to call it a project, because people, I suppose, understand that kind of terminology. Then you've got things like HS2, so you've got state-sponsored initiatives. So these are the massive mega projects that we always hear about in the news. And again, even though you know, we're talking about vast amounts of money, and some would argue that actually they're a portfolio or a program of work, and within that program, there are potentially hundreds of projects. But for ease of use and for maybe because it's more familiar to people, once again, they get called projects. So HS2, you know, it's the biggest environment project. In the early days with the projects where they were doing all the excavation work, so they were digging up bones before the main contractors could go in. So there's project upon project upon project. I'm not sure I've actually heard anybody call it a HS2 program, which is quite fascinating, but maybe that's because everybody's comfortable with the word project. And then we get into domains or sectors. So again, in construction, so £1 billion worth of construction projects approved for Manchester. So again, it's not unusual for the word project to be bandied about in a similar way that just raises the value or raises the visibility that something is going on, that is going to change something. And maybe that's what word project really means in today's world. So because we've got lots of projects and programs, then actually what we also need are lots and lots of different project management roles. Just being a project manager, I think project managers alone would probably struggle to deliver these initiatives because it tends to be a team sport. Well, once it gets over a certain size, it tends to be a team sport. You know, in the smaller initiatives, smaller value projects, you may well have a project of one. But once you get to sort of scale and size, then it's very unlikely that one person delivered the shard. We know that's not true because there would have been lots of different elements and different people building and making the teams up that actually successfully delivered that. So the interesting thing is that because there are so many different roles, that also means that there are so many different career paths. So because you want to work in project management doesn't mean that you necessarily want to be a project manager. You know, you could see a great career in PMO, or you could see a great career for yourself. Today, I'm a PA, but I've got great organizing skills. I've got great diary management skills. I've got great X, Y, and Z skills. And actually what I want to do is apply those to a project environment. So maybe my career path will start in project coordination, and maybe then I'll become a program or PMO analyst, and then maybe a PMO manager. So and none of those rely on you having been or wanting to be a project manager. So again, within this area, there are so many different routes, and that goes the same with somebody that's maybe an analyst or somebody that's a programmer today, because actually you may want to become a technical specialist or a technical project manager, somebody that's bringing niche skill or niche knowledge into the project and environment where everybody can use that. So I think the biggest thing for me is that project management is a broad church. It's a big and broad church, and you know, I think people need to recognise that it's more than just project management, being a project manager. So what does all that mean? So I think the way I would sum it up is that project management, for most of the time, is in the eyes of the buyer. Now, what I mean by that is we see this all the time in terms of recruitment, because we have lots of people that do roles in project management, but ultimately it's the buyer of the service that defines what they want in terms of a service provided by the people. So it doesn't matter if you've got X, Y, and Z, because if the buyer wants A, B, and C, then you probably don't fit their picture of what project management is in their environment. So that's, I think, always a good message that I like to send to people, that that isn't necessarily narrowing your field. What it's saying is be aware of the field. The other thing I find quite fascinating is that many projects will actually never have a project manager. So if I'm going to decorate one of the bedrooms once my arm gets better, then I will go through lots of the steps that I would in terms of a project manager. So I'll be doing some planning, I'll be buying materials, etc. I'll put a work plan together. I might bring in a subcontractor to do the plastering, but I'm not sure I'll call it a project. And I don't think I would actually have a hat that's a project manager on it. I feel a bit stupid wandering around the house with that on. So it's still a project, but it's not going to have a project manager. And the other thing that is quite interesting, that many business as usual activities are classed as projects now, and that's, for me, is always an interesting one as well, because if say your business is like BAE, building submarines, so you've got 30 years to build X number of submarines and then support them. Now, to me, that is pushing the boundaries of, is that really a project? Or is their business actually building submarines? And what they're going to do is use some skills associated with the management of projects to help them control their environment. And if you switch that on the head, many of the controls that we use in project management actually did come out of manufacturing and construction. So there's always this interesting clash of project v production management, and it's not unhealthy, and we can all learn off each other, but again, it can be a little confusing sometimes in terms of what that role exactly is and where it would sit. So titles tell part of the story. We may be called the same, but quite often that's where the similarity stops. And I think the best way to sort of give an example of that is project manager. So we have a project manager who earns £25,000 a year, and quite rightly he or she is doing that role of project management, and the salary is 25k. We've then down the road got somebody that is also a project manager that is earning £125,000 a year, and that person too is called a project manager. So I think we can all probably agree and probably picture the fact that they've probably got quite a different skill set. They've probably got quite a lot of different levels of responsibility and are responsible probably for a bigger team, a bigger budget, etc., etc. So the title is, yeah, project manager, but actually when you start scratching the surface and getting down into it, it is actually something that is quite different. But that's good, because it means also that if, in terms of a career, if we want to grow, then there's always somewhere for us to be thinking about where we want to go on our next step. And I think you know, it can also be a very rewarding career. I think the other thing that strikes me about project management maybe over the last few years is that it's becoming less formal. So you're seeing more and more people taking on project management. You're seeing more and more tools and initiatives coming in that are making project management less stuffy, less man in a suit type role, and some would say bringing a little bit more fun into it rather than us older guys. I think it's evolving, which is great again, because it's bringing some different ideas and different thoughts into the process. So, okay, so what does that all mean, really? It means as an individual, you have to have an open mind if you want to really embrace the project management arena. You need to be able to embrace the challenge, because ultimately there's no one definition. Nobody can give you that textbook definition of what exactly is a project manager. Or if they do, it's very, very high level. It's almost like in recruitment, people ring up and say, how's the market? And one of my favorite responses is, there is no such thing as the market. And I ask them in reply, how is your market? Because that's all that really matters, is what have you got the skills, the knowledge and the experience to address, because that's your market. The broader market is not necessarily that important to you. And again, in terms of project management as a career, you need to be very aware of that in terms of where you're looking to play and where you're looking to develop into. Okay, so domain expertise, or the SME, again, going back to the poll, I'm assuming that many of the others, the 51%, so we've got PAs, we've got IT office admin, data scientists, and then we've got people that are programmers, we've got analysts. So we've got a wide selection of people here that I would suggest are in that position of having a domain expertise. They may well be the subject matter expert in their organization, and they have that great opportunity to look at maybe moving that from a business as usual environment into a project management environment. So let's just explore this a little further and just see where we're going. So one of the things I think is quite interesting, that organizations love a subject matter expert. Now, the one thing that always comes to mind whenever I think about this is the good old rail sector, where you can almost hear the flat cap and broad voice saying, you know, you've got to be man and boy in this environment. You've got to be steeped in our domain, because if you aren't, then nobody will take you seriously. So no matter how good you are at being a project manager, you need to be steeped in project management. Sometimes you see it in IT. So there's a very high emphasis on actually being a subject matter expert and a project manager, but they definitely lead sometimes on being a subject matter expert rather than being a project manager. And the other thing that happens is sometimes in a regulated environment, then the SME may actually be required by law. So you might not be allowed to operate in that environment unless you are actually recognized or certified in a certain subject, because of the compliance requirements. So SME has its place. Sometimes personally, I think it's over-egged, but you know, as I said before, the buyer really calls the shots. The juxtaposition is that you talk to many project managers, and they see themselves as having a transferable skill set. When I say project managers, I mean project management practitioners. Sorry. So people see themselves as having a skill set that would be transferable across all domains. So maybe especially if you're running a PMO or you're supporting projects, then maybe that is a lot more transferable in the eyes of the buyers, because you're not necessarily seen as being front line. And again, as you maybe get further up the ladder in terms of being a program manager or even a portfolio manager, maybe again, because of the different skill set that you get in those environments, and you're further away from the coalface, then you do become more transferable in the eyes of the people that will be ultimately paying for you. But no matter where you are in your career, excuse me one second, where you are in your career, I think domain expertise is actually a great place to start. There's nothing worse than coming to the table empty-handed. So if you're looking to get into the project management domain, then what I always ask when I'm talking to people that are looking to break into the project domain is, what are you bringing to the table? And that domain expertise is what you're bringing to the table. So you're showing somebody that actually I know this environment, I can work in this environment. So you don't have to train me to work in the environment. The training and the concentration is on the work around my role. So actually I'm bringing something to the table. So that's really, really important, so that we can actually get there and we can start working. So typically, if we look at domain expertise, a lot of times, generality, I'll talk 80-20, 20-80. So maybe for the people that are listening this evening, your position is that you're not very experienced in projects, but you're very high in the domain knowledge. So you'd be 80% domain, maybe 20% in terms of projects, because you've done some self-study or you've been on basic training courses that introduce you to the project management environment. So you come in with that mix that is definitely swung towards being the domain expert. Over time, then I would expect, when I stopped being a project manager, then I was project managing. I was IT solutions. I was working with the Inland Revenue, putting infrastructure in. I was working with Sainsbury's. I ran what we call the office shopping project, which was the precursor to home shopping, because the only place that had any decent infrastructure was an office environment. So I was running a whole host of projects that were not really specific to a particular domain, because I was brought in to manage teams who could deliver, and within my team I had the domain experts. So mine was all about really controlling and managing that role and making sure we delivered. So if we think about time, some people will stop, so they will get the blend of domain and project management experience that fits either their comfort zone or the roles that they want to run. So if you want to be a technical project manager, you would generally be expected to maintain a high level of domain knowledge as well as your project. So that may well go to 60-40, and that is right for that particular environment. The other factor that really comes into this is the company or the organization that you work for. So company X may love having domain-rich people that do a bit of project management. So the obvious one for me here is I think about small software houses where they want an element of project management, but actually they want you to be down there digging in the code. They want you to be a productive part of the team, as well as bringing in some project management and have the ability to talk to the client. So it's maybe 70-30, but the real emphasis and the hiring will be done around your technical competence. Then company Y, maybe we've got a good example of this at the moment. We're looking for some Dynamics, Microsoft Dynamics project managers. And they need to understand the dynamics. They're not going to be hands-on in terms of configuring the product, but they need to be able to understand it so that they can manage their team and also talk to the client. So they become very much interpreters, being able to forge or bridge the gap between the non-technical people and the technical people. So those people are maybe company Y type people where they have maybe a 50-50 blend of knowledge in terms of their domain and also in terms of project management. And then you get the other extreme where it is all about actually you are hired to be a project management practitioner. And you could be on project X this week, and when you finish that in 6 months' time, you could be on project Y. And it is all about project management. They're selling you for your ability in the field of project management. And your team will have all the relevant skills that allow that project to be delivered. So you're all about people, you're all about making things happen. You're about communication. You're there. You're a conduit. You're knocking down walls. You're building bridges. You're doing all the what we call soft stuff that actually is the hard stuff and the real high value stuff around, and that will make those projects be successful. So you've got to think about this. It's really important, and because ultimately overriding all of that, what you've got to think about is this is actually your career. And if you're working in an organization where you think that the emphasis is too much on domain and you actually want to get more into the project space, then you need to think about that organization and are they actually going to allow you to do that. It's interesting because as people get let go when times get tough, it's really interesting to see how many people are actually, I call them institutionalized, because they come to the market after 10 years of working for Company X, and Company X has always called them a project manager. And actually their skill set is equivalent to what may well be a project coordinator in many other organizations, because the organization has molded them to what is right for the organization, not what is right for their long-term career. And if you don't have an eye on your career, it's very easy to get lost in what the organization is telling you is project management. And this is where self-development and being aware of the marketplace is really, really important. My final warning around domain knowledge is really summarized by this picture of, we've got a ship and it's heading towards danger. Now, if you're involved in the delivery of projects, then at times it is like steering a ship. It's got many moving parts. It's got a team working at all different levels and all bringing different skills. And also, as the project manager, you're always scanning for danger. You're looking at your risks. You're managing issues. And one of the things that can really impact somebody that is a domain expert is that they end up, when we have the first sign of trouble, they end up in the engine room and they're trying to fix the problems in the engine room. So if they're a coder, they get their head into the code. And my concern is that while they're doing that, there's nobody on the bridge. The true place for the project manager is on the bridge. You should be watching, you should be looking after the bigger picture and making sure that your team are focused on the right elements that will get you safely to your destination. So that's something to always be aware of when you are an SME, is which role am I actually playing here? Okay, so that's a bit about the domain side. So at this point, I'm going to hand over to Lindsay. I'm going to have a quick swig of water, but I'm going to hand over to Lindsay now, and Lindsay's going to talk about career development and things that people really need to be thinking about in terms of if you want to, address and build your future career in the project space, then what sort of things do you need to think about, and what sort of preparation do you want to do? So what we call this is sales for project management.
Okay, thank you very much, John. It's hopefully you've from the things that John's been talking about is the overriding thing is that projects come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. Nearly every single industry sector that you can think of has projects of varying different degrees, which means for me, when I'm talking to people about who want to make a career change into project management, is that it is possible. Not necessarily easy, but it is possible because there are so many different types of projects out there. So nobody could really be ruled out because, there's bound to be projects that need exactly somebody like you. So we've got to think practical now for the next 30 minutes or so. And this is my favorite bits about helping people to think about what it is that they've got. So we're going to be thinking about knowing your product. And I love the sales analogy because it kind of implies that there's got to be some action here. Look, you're going to be selling yourself. As much as you hate that idea, ultimately what you're trying to do is make a career change, which means that you're going to have to get out there and then be able to clearly and concisely talk to people about what it exactly is, what you've got. You've also got to be able to understand the marketplace in which you want to operate or what you think you've got to offer, the right kind of market for you. And then obviously you've got the sales materials that you need to back up, and that can be things like your profile, your CV, that kind of stuff. So I like the sales analogy because it is about you are going to be selling yourself, and you've kind of got to think about yourself a bit like a shop front, really. So we always start with this thing, or when I'm talking to and coaching and mentoring people that call us up and say, I want to get into project management, and we've had a great question already from somebody who's working in SEO, and they've been doing some training and they now want to understand more and to try and get into project management. And what I always say to people is that there's two different types of project management. There's formal and there's informal. So what's John was referring to when we're talking about decorating a bedroom or, helping with a village fete or something like that, more informal. But I think what people are really asking when they're wanting a career change into project management is that formal kind of project management role. So we start off by talking to people about a personal stock take. So we've still got that kind of sales analogy going on. So that personal stock take, it's actually about being able to stand back, sit back and reflect for a moment about actually what skills do I have, what knowledge have I already got, and what experiences have I already got that are going to help me to make that step across. And often people will think, well, I haven't really got much experience. But actually, you probably have got experience, because otherwise, why is project management kind of turned your head? Why are you even interested in getting into a project management career? So that's the very first question that you're going to answer. Why do I want to do this? And generally, by and large, what happens is that people are doing a SME type role, and whether that be something like an office admin or working on a service desk or as a programmer, whatever that might be, you have already had some experience of projects. And it could be that you've been on the peripheral, that you've seen it happening in the organization, or you were brought into a project as an SME to be able to lend your support or resource for that particular project. Or like a lot of people, it just got dumped on your desk. That actually is an initiative, is a piece of work that needs to happen. You just happen to be in the right place at the right time, or the wrong place at the wrong time, depending on the way that you look at it. And now you've got a taste for it. And that's generally how most people come across this thing of, I want to get into project management because I've had a taste of it. And it's normally to do with the variety that it offers, or the niceties of being able to really plan a piece of work, and that sense of achievement when you know that what you planned has actually worked and actually come off. So you're thinking about what is it that you've already got that do align with project management skills. Now, if you're not sure about what project management skills are, actually one of the best places to start is a competency framework. Now, there's a lot of them around. You can just go onto Google or onto Amazon and just look for a project management competency framework, because a competency framework actually lays out what are the competencies of project management. And you'll find that there are things like, well, there's planning and scheduling, there's risk management, there's issue management, there's stakeholder engagement, and there's all these things that have got these great words and great titles, but actually you've probably already been doing that. You've probably already been planning and scheduling. Okay, on this particular piece of work you were doing, you weren't using a work breakdown structure, but actually you have got some skills around the planning and scheduling, for example. So the competency framework does help. Have a look, read through. It will get you thinking about, actually, that is what I was doing, but I just didn't call it that. I didn't even know it was called that. And that's part of the battle, I think, with project management, is that it can feel very cliquey when you're on the outside looking in with all the different phrases and terminology that you have for things and acronyms and all this business. But actually, it's got its own language. And when you start to understand what that language is, and you'll start to crack it a little bit more, one, you'll understand more what skills I've already got, because actually, yes, I have got this, I just didn't call it that. Second thing is that you start to be able to talk to other people about what it is you've got in that common project management language. And obviously you've got knowledge, hopefully, and if you're interested in project management, you should have been buying books, you should have been reading stuff, you should have been listening to podcasts, you should have been immersing yourself, because I said before, it's not impossible to get into project management, but it's difficult. It is difficult. It's a fantastic job for a lot of people, and you're not the only one that's seen it and thought, I'd like that. I think I could do that. I think I'd love to do that as a job. There's a lot of other people out there, so there's a lot of competition. So we know that when we start to talk to people about, well, why do you want to change into, change that career into project management? I want to be able to hear passion from people about why you're actually going to be doing that. Or why do you want to do that? And then, of course, we've got experience, which is all about, what is it that you've actually been doing on the job that is touched on the project side of stuff, because then you'll start to use that in terms of writing your CVs and your profiles and all that kind of good stuff. The other thing that you find a lot of the time when people want to talk to us about how can I get into project management is when we ask them about, well, what's your thinking so far? What have you, what have you thought? What would you, have you thought about what kind of steps you think you might need to take? And a lot of the time, it's met with a silence or a blank look on the face. And you do have to think about this in terms of, for your own sanity more than anything. And you probably come across things like SMART objectives. But one of the things that I often talk to people about this is that it might be a difficult journey, along this journey to being getting into a project management role. And actually, it's really nice to be able to have something a bit more concrete and a bit more solid. So, for example, your goals might be, well, first of all, I want to understand about my domain has been around IT. I'm hearing a lot about agile delivery. Don't really know much about that. Actually, one of my goals is going to be that I need to understand more about this, but not only in terms of a knowledge gathering thing, but I want to be able to understand how it affects the project management role, how it works on the team. When they're talking about different artifacts in Agile, what are they talking about? So it's about being able to set goals. And we often say, one of the problems with this is that people will say, I want to be a project manager. And you're coming from an environment where you've done a little bit of projects, but actually you want to be a fully blown formal project manager, and it feels like a massive elephant. So we've always talked about, well, let's look at what those chunks are. So it's that classic saying, how do you eat an elephant? One chunk at a time. It's exactly the same thing when you're thinking about, I want to get into project management. The formal project management role is right out there. It could be 3-5 years away. Because generally when I'm talking to people about being a project manager, not only are they having to build their skills around project management, but there's that other magic word in that title, project manager, and it's the manager side, you know. So we often hear this thing of, you know, project management as a first career straight out of university. It's like, you know, is there enough knowledge and experience and skills there to be a manager at that time in your life? You know, so it's about being able to think about, well, what realistic goals could I have? I'm currently working in IT office administration, I'm a PA or something like that. A nice smart objective would be to understand the role of what is required when you're supporting delivery, you know, at a very basic level, because it's then when you start to think, actually, now I'm starting to understand what this is all about. I feel more confident in myself and the way that I'm talking to people about my career aspirations. And that's half the battle, isn't it? To feel confident in that you're making the right choices here, that you're confident that you're not pitching yourself too high, setting yourself up for fail, all that kind of good stuff. So goals are good. The hard work there, that's why not many people do them. You know, what do we say on New Year's Eve about setting your objectives for the next year? And you're like, you know, but it does help to be able to keep your sanity when it feels like you're getting nowhere. Got some nice goals to look back at and say, come on, right, what do I need to be doing next? The other thing that we hear a lot about is when I say to people, you want to be a project manager. Okay, so tell me about, you know, what's your expectations? You know, how do you mentally see yourself as a project practitioner or, you know, a specific project manager role? And when we're talking about the environmentals, I want to know things like, well, what kind of money are you expecting then? You know, what do you think you're worth? And you have to be able to have that grown-up conversation rather than saying, I don't know, I have no clue. Yeah, so this is about understanding exactly what it is that you're looking for to be able to make that move, because that's half the battle as well. If you're coming from a career change point of view, you've probably already got a decent job. You're already earning at a certain level. Can you afford to make this career change into project management? There may be a step backward before you can go forwards. Can you do it? Do you have enough behind you, a little nest egg? Is your family happy with that? All that kind of good stuff needs to be thought about. It's also about things like your working hours. You know, this is a lot of recruitment we've done in the past for professional services or consulting firms. They expect you to be working a lot, and not only in work hours, but you're working away on client site. You need to understand what you're up for, because that will be able, you know, you'll be articulating all this kind of stuff as you start to have conversations with people about, you know, I want to make it into project management. This is who I am. This is what I am. This is, you know, what I'm capable of doing. But also, here's some of the expectations around what I'm prepared to do for that. You know, another project roles to spend a lot of time on the road, client sites, or you could be working far away from your home base. Not so much now, but who knows what's going to happen next year when that all starts to kick off again. And again, it's about the, you know, the location and the type of organisation that you want to be working for as well. These are the kind of questions that I always ask people that are wanting to change into, you know, make that change into a project management role. You know, this is part and parcel of it. It shouldn't be a peripheral thing. You've got to be ready for when somebody turns around and says, you know what, yeah, I think we could use somebody like you. So come on then, so, you know, how much are you looking for? You need to have thought about it, and you need to have, you know, be ready to have those kind of conversations. The other thing that you need to be doing in terms of your sales is that, you know, if you're going to be selling anything, you need to understand your particular market. As John said, it's one of the worst questions we get is, what is the market like at the moment? It's like, and you're coming from an IT background, and what about if I said, well, you know, yeah, construction companies are doing really well at the moment, looking for loads of project people, and you're like, what? You know, it's not your market. So you've got to think about what it is that you want to do. So John's alluded to all those different titles within project management. It's not just a project manager. In my opinion, PMO is where it's at. Who'd want to be a project manager? It's a thankless task. PMO is far more interesting, but I'm biased, but it is an important one about what do you want to do, not just out there thinking, oh, 5-10 years time, I'd love to be a head of department or head of project management practice. Actually, you've got to be thinking about, well, what do you want to do, like tomorrow, next year, 2 years, that kind of thing. So you're thinking about and understanding the different kinds of career paths that are available in project management. And also, where do you want to do it? It surprises me so many times how many people are just quite happy to see a job advert. But yeah, I've got about 80% of that stuff. I'm going to apply for it. No idea what that organisation really does, whether it's, you know, anything that really interests you, whether it's a cultural fit, you know, anything that excites you, that's going to make you jump out of bed in the morning. Actually, why don't you start with where you do want to work and actually start to think about, how can I plan stuff around this? You know, if you do want to work for the Apples and the Amazons of the world, it's okay, so how do I get there? What is it that they look for? And start that way. If I want to work for public sector, if I want to work for a government department, what do I need to be doing? So think about it beforehand in terms of, you know, all this knowledge and skills I've got. I think this would be a good fit. So we had a comment from, I think it was Mark that was saying he's in SEO. Classic would be that he goes into and looks around things like marketing, first of all, in terms of what kind of projects do we have within large organizations in a marketing department or smaller marketing size agencies, what kind of projects did they have? And you start to think about, my first step, my first chunk, my first stepping stone is I've got to be able to use the domain experience I've already got. So I'm going to have to start, in his example, would be I've got to look at things around the marketing elements because they're going to be interested in that particular domain experience that he's bringing to the table already. And the final bit here is this thing that everybody absolutely hates, but is totally true of the way that things happen in the marketplace today, is what does that part of the market want and expect? And John's talked a bit about that already, but I always talk to people about, if you imagine that, you know, you're on a shop shelf, you're a box, what is it that you're selling? Nicely packaged with a nice bow on top. I open it up, I know exactly what it is that I'm getting. And it's really, really difficult to think of yourself, I'm going to have to put myself in a box. It's absolutely the worst thing that we can think of as human beings, that we have to be, I've got to pigeonhole myself. Absolutely, because one of the problems that you have in the marketplace is that if the people are looking for a project manager, they're not quite sure what kind of project manager they're looking for. And when we look at CVs for roles, we get hundreds for lots of, you know, for one opportunity, you could be looking at about 100, 150 CVs. And it's the people that quite clearly know themselves and can quite clearly and concisely write that down in a CV are the ones that you tend to engage with, because you know that they know themselves, probably have a clearer idea about what it is that they can offer. So it's an interesting one when you're trying to make a career change into project manager. Say, for example, you are working on a service desk today and you're wanting to get into project management. In my particular analogy around, well, what will the box look like? The box has got to clearly show that you've done some project elements around the service desk. So it could be that you've been doing some desktop refresh type stuff and that's the project. But it'd be very clear and very focused in terms of, well, here's the ITL type stuff, here's the service management type stuff, and here's the project type stuff that I've done all around that. Very neatly fastened up. Somebody opens that CV for a role that is a service management related role, they're going to be able to very quickly and very clearly see the experiences that you brought together and pulled together in order to apply for that role. It's about putting yourself in a box, as much as we hate that. So when we're looking at practicalities, there's all these kind of things that we kind of need to get into place. So before we get into that, we've got questions that's coming up. So do project managers normally start being a junior PM or straight into PM? Two things about that. Actually, legally in this country, we're not allowed to call them junior project managers. I don't know if you knew that, but it's the Age Legislation Act, is that we actually refer to them as assistant project managers. It's an interesting one. Lots of people still call them junior PMs, but do they start out being a junior PM or straight to PM? It depends. It absolutely depends. So, for example, a classic career path would be, but you start working supporting projects as a project coordinator, right-hand man or woman to a project manager. The project manager then gives you a little bit more responsibility and you become the assistant project manager, and then you prove your mettle and then you get promoted to project manager. Or, like we've already been talking about this evening, you could have a quite sizable experience in the domain that you've been working in. Boss comes to you one day, we've got a really big initiative that's coming up. We know that you know your stuff. We know that you're quite good at managing people and get things done. There you go, project manager promotion, get on with it. What do you reckon, John?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because what I will always encourage people to do is look around the business that they're currently working in, because it's always much easier to get into project management in an organization where you're known. So if there are business initiatives going on, put your hand up, volunteer. If the classic is somebody in the NHS looking to leave the NHS to move into project management, and you go, how crazy are you? Because the NHS must be kicking off projects all the time. You work in that environment, seek them out, go and find out what's going on and get yourself hooked up into a project, because so many of these roles are never advertised because they don't need to advertise them, because there are people working in their own businesses that can step up to the plate and take on these roles. If you're looking for a junior or that entry-level project manager role, they are scarce.
And that was all from this voice over here somewhere. Thank you, John. And one of the other questions are most project managers working via contracts, or are there more permanent roles? It flips and flops all the time. So today you'll look at some of the things that are out there on the news about jobs and stuff. They're saying that there's a lot more contract roles at the moment. Actually, for us right now, in terms of the project management recruitment that we do, it's the absolute opposite. There's actually more permanent roles that we're working on than contract roles. It's also, you know, there's no rhyme and reason to it a lot of the time. You know, there's obvious things where there might be a particular hot project or initiative, especially something that comes out from the government, or especially stuff that's going on at the moment. And that tends to be, you know, we need somebody in quickly. It tends to be a contract, but there isn't, it never is one or the other. You know, it really does change quite dramatically. You know, there is never a clear answer. And question from Claire about being in the US at the moment, but hopefully coming over to the UK to start working in the next few years, about how you can best set yourself up for a global career in project management. Actually, we're going to come on to that in a second, talking about the different development opportunities and things around project management to get you thinking as well. And yeah, so we'll carry on. So we've got in terms of sales materials, then hopefully everybody knows that, what a elevator pitch is. It is that opportunity to be able to be in a position where you can talk to somebody about what it is that you're trying to do. A classic would be a recruiter. Somebody had asked, do we interview project managers? We interview project managers all the time for, obviously, for the jobs that we're trying to fill at the moment. And the elevator pitch is an interesting one, because one of the first questions that I certainly ask is, you know, so tell me a little bit more about you. You know, so you've applied for this particular role. There you go. I've given you the stage. You've got a minute. And a lot of people just don't embrace it. And this is what I was talking about before, about being really sure about what it is you've got to offer, and to be able to get that pitch right. I mean, it comes from that thing of you get into an elevator at the same time as an important person in your business. You've got a minute before you get to the floor when you're both going to get out. You've got a minute basically to pitch something to them. And in this case, we're talking about pitching yourself. And it is a really interesting one about, do you have it off by T? So you've got to be ready for the questions of, you know, so why this role? Why have you applied for this particular role? And you've got to be able to go straight in there with, well, I've identified this particular part of this role, i.e. the problem. This is what I can do to sort out and provide the solution for that. And then, you know, you're leaving on a very clear and concise message to the person that who's asking you the questions. And it's the same thing when it comes to thinking about interviews. You use exactly the same kind of technique. It's called a STAR technique, which is about presenting a problem, a situation, and then you talk about how you resolve or can provide a solution to that issue. So it's all wrapped up in that whole thing of, have I got the presentation, have I got the message that I want to give out there?
Just to build on that, I'm working with a hiring manager on HS2 at the moment, and one of the things he's asked for is every candidate that we put forward needs to submit a short paragraph as to why they want the job, what they will bring to the job.
Yeah.
Because he said CVs don't give him that. He wants to know, he wants to see passion. He wants to, you've applied for this job, you've gone through a screening with us for the job, now tell us why.
Yes, I mean, it's CVs are the bane of everybody's life, aren't they? I mean, you just heard there that an end client doesn't particularly like them, doesn't get enough out of them. When you're looking for a role, you're always messing about with them. Is it doing the right, am I saying the right kind of things? We see hundreds of them that never seem to have been looked at properly at all. You know, we get everything from like, you know, 10, 12 pages long, rambling things that bear no relation to the job that's been applied for, all of that kind of stuff. But actually, you know, let's not talk about the negatives. Let's talk about the positive side of it, which, you know, if the CV is what it is still the main document that most people are looking at when it comes to trying to find an opportunity, and it is your opportunity to do that first impression. And the way that I see a CV is that the first page is that shop window. So you're essentially spending most of your time on writing a great profile, a great either a skills or a key achievements part, and then the last role that you've been working on. That's your front page. And it's when you get that right, when it's just all falls into place, most recruiters and hires will make their decision on that glance, but sometimes can only be seconds because they're looking and it feels right, which is, you know, is really difficult when you're trying to write one. I'm going to write a CV that's just going to feel right for somebody. So 3 pages max, but remember, spend most of the time on the first page. When I'm doing a lot of CV and career mentoring type stuff for people that are wanting to get into project management, the general thing that we get into is the technical stroke project hybrid. So I've been doing a very technical role, but I've done a bit of project, and it's about trying to find the balance on your CV that shows both of those things. And generally, by and large, it's not a form of rule, is that we tell people that actually make sure the technical parts of your job are clear, and make sure the project parts are clear. Still within the same career history, but separate. So people can clearly see the bits where you have done some project related stuff. And if it's a technical CV, just be really careful about the 3-letter acronyms, because it can be a real off-putter. And then you're tailoring your CV to the opportunity that you're going for. There's stacks and stacks of advice around CVs, especially for the project management field. If you go onto Arras People's website, arraspeople.co.uk, you'll see there's some career guides on there, and there's some stuff there, including CV templates and how to think about writing your stuff. Biggest mistake you can make is talking too much about the technical side or the project side, i.e. what the project outcomes were about, what was the change for the business, what was the tech involved, and not enough about you. In other words, what was it that you did to make that project a success or to make your role a success? It's about thinking about your particular skills and experience. That is the thing that the hirer is actually buying. It's you. So think about how the balance is on the CV. And then we're thinking about LinkedIn profiles. That's the thing at the moment now. It goes hand in hand, and it's great because it's about being able to find a balance between a formal CV, formal language written in the third person, all that kind of jazz, and actually the CV, the profile on LinkedIn allows you to write it differently and to have a bit more of a, as it says here, a personable summary. Try and get some personality in by using the LinkedIn. I hope everybody's got a LinkedIn account. 3 things that you absolutely need to do is a very bare minimum: keep it up to date, because hirers will look at your LinkedIn profile. You should be adding people all the time. You can see there the average number, 930 contacts that each person has on average. And you need to be thinking about everybody that you meet, everybody that you have worked with before in the past, people that, friends of friends, and people that you actually admire. And you absolutely need to be thinking about engagement and how we engage with other people, because not only is the engagement important, but also we'll find out in a second about actually how that helps you in terms of things like development as well, as you start to immerse yourself into project management. And then finally, around self-promotion is that horrible, yucky thing where you have got to get yourself out there and you have got to be talking to people, and you've got to start making this happen for yourself, because if you don't, nobody else will. And it does come down to self-promotion. And I know, for a lot of people that might be English on this webinar, we hate all that kind of stuff about putting yourself out there. It's not something that comes naturally to a lot of people, but we have to gain confidence in it, because like it or not, a project manager is a role that has confidence. They have to be that person on that team, but does have the confidence. So we need to be able to do this kind of stuff. Forget about it being networking. Think about it differently. Think about it as relationship building, because you know what? There's actually quite a lot of that goes on in project management in the day-to-day job as well. So stop thinking about that horrible word, networking, and we think about things like, okay, so if I want to make an approach to somebody in the spirit of relationship building, always keep it at the back of your mind. Yes, I do want something from this person, but equally, how can I help them? So it's thinking about reciprocation. And as John said before, the roles do come from people that you do know. It's, you ask around, where did you find your last job? A lot of them come from people that you know. Therefore, you need to make sure that you're relationship building. We talked before about how you can develop your knowledge in terms of project management. Essentially, there's 3 different elements. There's a technical project management side, there's a people and performance management side, and there's the leadership. Now, if we look at some of the things that we've gathered over the years from our benchmark reports, you can see there, a project manager, these are the skills that project management hirers are expecting to see are most important in these people. So, we can see that planning and organising is a big one. Of course it is. That's what a project manager does. But look at the other things: communication skills, relationship management, leadership. The technical stuff comes down the line, comes further down the line, So yes, having the ability to put together a risk management plan is absolutely there. But how are you going to communicate it, actually more important. So you probably sometimes it's not just what, doing a course is not the be all and end all. It's going to be what is going to be my style? What is my behavior going to be like when it comes to actually doing these projects and leading these projects? And then we're on to today, really. Things have changed dramatically over the last, even 4 or 5 years. We're getting more into things like, mixed methodologies. So we've got the waterfall, agile, DevOps stuff going on. We've got customers at the center. We've got data science, AI, machine learning, lots of different types of solution, fast-paced, lots of stuff going on in terms of the way that organizations are seeing how projects are being delivered. And you know, especially for a lot of people on this call that are, you know, interested in BCS, obviously from an IT tech point of view, and their development they're doing around AI-based courses, there absolutely is going to be change coming down the line in project management, which is brilliant news for a lot of people that are more into data science and analysis and insights and that kind of stuff. There will be bigger roles for that kind of person on projects, no doubt. And then with development, you're thinking, hopefully you've come across the 70-20-10 model, where actually your 10% is just the formal learning, it's just the projects, you know, the project courses that you can do. But actually the 90% is built up by, you know, the things that you're learning on the job, the things that you fail at and pick yourself up and dust yourself down and get on again. The feedback that you get every day from the teams that you're working for, your sponsors, your stakeholders, your senior execs, whoever they might be. There's different ways to develop this stuff, and Jon's going to finish off the session this evening just talking a little bit about what the 10 and the 90% are.
Okay, thank you, Lindsay. Hopefully that's has given us a much broader view of what we need to be thinking about in terms of ourselves and how we can move forward in terms of our careers. So the 10% is an interesting one because depending on where you sit, and this again comes back to the fact that project management is many things to many people, you could argue that there's two big fixations today. One is still Prince 2, and I've got Prince 2, can you get me a job? And the other end is the fixated on agile, be that a big A, a little a, or whatever style or flavor of agile you want it to be. And then between that, we've got sort of the APM curriculum, which we tend to see more in some of the areas of public sector, construction, engineering, so people, the big constructors, MOD, that sort of area, but not generally in a lot of areas of the commercial world. Then you've got PMI, so we were talking before a question about coming over from America. So PMI actually can be seen as the best global passport if you want to be a project manager. So many of the big multinational organizations, banks like Barclays, they adopted PMI as their standard. I used to work for Hewlett Packard, so PMI eventually became their standard, even though we initially started with a customized Prince 2 stroke, any other best practice we could get. I know working with pharmaceuticals, a lot of them are PMI based. And then if you're in the technical area, you may be BCS based, such as you people on tonight. So there are lots of different paths. So again, it's the classic, what is project management? Well, it could be a bit of this, it could be a bit of that, it could. So again, this all comes back to understanding your market, understanding where you want to play and what your customers will be looking for. The 90%, it's all about experience. Get some battle scars. It's an experiential profession. You can't learn all this out of a book. You've got to learn it on the job. And if you're thinking about getting into project management, if you volunteer for an initiative within your business, seek out mentors. You will see good project managers. You will see appallingly bad project managers. Learn from the best. Actually, learn from the ones that aren't very good as well, because you can pick up so many things that you look at and you think, I could do better than that. I could improve on that. I could communicate better. I could plan better. So there's lots of learning, whether they be good at the job or actually in need of some improvement. So the main message about the 90% is, I always say to people, don't become a 5-star general who's never seen a battlefield. And by that, I mean, I see so many CVs where people have got every accreditation going. They've got Prince, they've got Agile, they've got this, they've got the other. And actually, what experience have they got to go with that? None. Okay, so we're getting near our time limit here. We're looking here now just to wrap up the session. Hopefully, in terms of the learning objectives, we've managed to, between Lindsay and I, we've managed to hit an understanding of what we believe the project management domain to be. The key difference, that don't talk necessarily about project manager, talk about project management and the great big interesting family of people and roles that are out there to explore, to try and to grow with. Domain knowledge is a great advantage. So think about how you can use that to your advantage. Think about how you can sell that as a real value and differentiator when you're looking to get into your next role. But at the same time, depending on where you want your career path to go, remember that actually you want some project management in there as well. Lots of good stuff there about career planning, and Prince 2, it's not the only course of action. We could have spoke for an hour on that, but a totally different subject. So that's it from us at this point.
I think we've answered a lot of the questions that you've got throughout the evening, but if you're wanting to get in touch with either John or I, have a look at the website. We said there's quite a lot of stuff on there if you're wanting some practical based stuff around things like CV templates, how to put together a CV, that kind of stuff. Also, you can check me out on LinkedIn, make a connection if you'd like to, and remember, you've met somebody today, so make sure you connect with them. It's just finally just good luck with your career. Like we said, it's not impossible. It can sometimes feel really difficult to try and crack the door open to finding a really good opportunity, but it's about getting your ducks lined up, and good luck with it.
Yeah, good luck, and thank you.
Yeah, good evening, everybody.
Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Hi there. Don't go away just yet. So it was great actually, and your timing was super as well. Project managers, obviously. So thank you both, John and Lindsay. Extremely interesting presentation. Plenty of food for thought for would-be project managers, and I would say a bit of a reality check for some existing project managers, maybe thinking about how better to rewrite their CVs and applications for future jobs, because it seems to me it's too easy to go down a route and say, oh, I'm great at that, I really enjoyed that, so I'll put loads of stuff in my CV about that, and forget that actually the next job is nothing like it.
Yeah,
something else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you might fall lucky and somebody's looking for exactly what you did on your last project. But actually, most project managers would be bored if they got the same project.
Yeah.
That's why they're doing project management, I think, isn't it? So they don't do the same thing.
Maybe you should invite us back, and I'll do how to write a perfect project-based CV.
Oh, I'm sure you get plenty of takers on that one. Yes. Good. Anyway, look, thank you so much. I assume everybody will be clapping indoors as well. So that was really brilliant. So thanks very much for coming along and sharing your experiences with us. I just want to say a couple of things before we close. Somebody did ask about whether the slides would be available. Certainly they will appear on our website, and obviously BCS members will be able to see that. But we'll provide a link as well to the recording that we've done, and I believe you'll also be putting some stuff on your site to let people know.
Yeah.
So that's really good. And will they have a copy of the slides on your site as well, or not?
Yeah. And if you let me have the questions that we've had this evening, I can make sure that we write a fuller answer to anybody who might be interested. So yeah.
Smashing. No, that's really good. Thanks for that. Right. So that's covered that point off. So the other thing is, I did say earlier to everybody, fill in the feedback form, because I'm sure John and Lindsay want to know people's thoughts on how it went as well. And we'll provide that feedback to you both as well. You know, everything that we get back, we send on to you. So we don't pull our punches, but I don't think there will be many punches.
We look forward to it.
Be kind.
Oh, that's great. Right. Finally, don't forget to come along to our next meeting on the 17th of December. And if you're sitting at home, bring your mince pies and a glass of wine with you while it's going on, which is what we normally do when we have an event at BCS sites. So thanks very much indeed, everybody, for attending. Look forward to seeing all of you again very shortly, and good night to all.
Good night. Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.